This podcast may contain explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
Now, I forgot to mention it in our last episode, but we just recently had our 4th anniversary.
Yes.
Our first original episode released on February 27th, 2020. Any remembrances back to that original date?
No, other than the fact that I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, that episode is very different than the rest of how we've progressed. We made sure that it had to be under an hour, specifically because we were running out of time. The site or the distributor that we were using at the time ran out after an hour, or did not allow us to continue recording after an hour. We were on lapel mics, and we recorded it on my phone.
Yeah.
Now we're on a Zoom format type recording system with, I would say, second degree professional mics. You have a specific studio. We've been doing this for a while. I didn't edit the first episode, which I'm sure if you go back and listen to that you could tell the quality difference. The sound difference, the quality difference, all the rest of it. It's been quite a long time. And then after we did that, we moved into using Skype. That was a treat.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, we've progressed into this. So we have now been around longer than the original Trump administration.
Wow.
When we were recording this at the time, did it really feel like that was possible?
No, I just had this feeling that it was going to be a total cluster and we would probably like crash and burn and give up.
Well, technically we had one, attempt at a podcast episode in, I want to say like 2017 or something like that, where we tried to record something on a laptop and it didn't quite work. And we were trying to do like this culture and sports infusion thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it just never got much further than trying to record the first time. This has been a different experience, to say the least, in trying to grow things out.
Yes.
Nobody listened in that first year. We have slowly but steadily gained community, gained following, gained subscribers, and we have a ton of back episodes. But even just this week, we've been doing this thing for 4 years, and only just now, people from our office, the people we work with, are now coming up to us and starting to say how much they like the show because they just recently started picking it up.
Yeah.
And we still can't get our family to listen to this regularly. So, that shows how much of a struggle it's been to try and develop the true following, per se.
I know. I mean, we used to make the joke the only reason we had Mom on was because that was the only way she ever listened to an episode.
Still is.
I know.
I mean, as much as I keep trying to throw you under the bus and saying how you give all these bad jokes and give her such a hard time, and we occasionally do, it's not nearly to the level that I have convinced her it is, she still won't listen to the show, which I just find hilarious.
Well, yeah, but even if she listened to the show, would she remember it? I mean, that's the big joke, is she doesn't remember seeing movies. And then she'll stand there and swear up and down she saw a movie, and she saw it with me, and I'm like, I've never seen the movie.
Oh, I thought it was the funniest thing when she tried to convince me that she had seen Call Me By Your Name. And my first question was, okay, what is the peach scene?
I know. She'll go, well, we've never seen this movie. Honey, we watched this movie. We went to the theater in Reedsburg when we were living in Boston. I believe it was a Friday night. I can remember minute details, and she's like, I don't ever think I've ever seen this film.
Well, there is a hidden benefit to that. You can experience a good film for the first time multiple times.
That's true.
There are certain films that I would love to experience for the first time over again, and she does have that power.
Yeah, I know. Oh, well.
So, obviously, if you've read the episode heading, you know that we are not covering our normal great movie that's at least 5 years old. Tonight, for our fourth year, we're doing our Oscar preview or Oscars preview for the year 2023. And I think it's just best to kind of jump in. One of the things behind the structure of the show that I will reveal, if you've not listened to one of our Oscars previews before, is at least the first year we kind of gave a who will win and then who should win. That went into the second year where we decided to do a bad movie bet. So the person who got less predictions correctly ended up being subject to the other picking a bad movie for them to do and then submitting a episode where they had to review said movie in the style of the show. If you want examples of that, I lost both of the last 2 years. I've covered Ed Wood's Glenn or Glenda and David Schumacher's Batman and Robin. So I am going to do my best to try and avenge said losses, but we'll still follow the same format. So before we kind of get going here, we've kind of hinted at it before, but what are the stakes of this year's bad movie bet? What have you picked for me in case I get less correct predictions than you?
The movie Left Behind. Not the good one with Kirk Cameron, which
Well,
actually
first off,
has...
let's be clear. That's not even a good one, but okay.
Okay. But the better one with Kirk Cameron, which at least has some semblance
so you
of
picked
a point.
the Kirk Cameron one for me. Thank you. I appreciate
No.
that.
No. I picked the worst one, which is the...
Oh, no. You already said that you were picking the Kirk Cameron.
No, I did not. That's not what I said.
You twisted yourself in knots.
No, I did not. I said I am not picking that one. I am picking the other one. The other one, which has... Why am I drawing a blank?
He's great at acting.
Yes. I'm absolutely drawing a blank.
If I picked up the Declaration of Independence and found a treasure map on the back,
it doesn't
would
help
that help
me. No, I know who he is. It's a matter of I'm not remembering his name.
He's the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in an animal enclosure with metal bars, it's called a
Nicolas Cage. Ugh.
There you go.
Okay, it's the 2014 version with Nicolas Cage, which, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is the third worst film of all time.
Okay.
I thought about the number 2, which was a horror film, but they said it wasn't scary. So I figured, why make you watch a horror film that's not scary?
Okay. And for you, as I've mentioned on multiple occasions, I have picked the movie Simon Says, which I think is spelled S-E-Z, where Dennis Rodman is the starring figure as a spy. I don't know how he could pass off as a spy, but he apparently does. With supporting character Dane Cook as they do an action movie spy thriller through the streets of Paris. I think it had a 19%.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
With that in mind, let's start with our first category. We're going to go with Best Animated Short. And because I am the 2-time loser of this particular program, I'm going to give mine
skipping
first.
Around, huh? So now I got to kind of find it in my notes here.
Skipping around, it's at the direct bottom. I'm working the way up.
Oh, okay. All right, then fine.
They're in order. I gave you the notes in order. What are you talking about? Like trying to say that I've already rigged the game or something?
Well, I wouldn't
going all MAGA on me.
I wouldn't put it past you. You are a poor sport.
I'm a poor sport.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, uh-huh.
I can't help it.
Mr. I cheat at Monopoly.
I don't cheat at Monopoly. No one knows how much money exactly Donald Trump does, but we just know it's not more than $100 million because that's what he said in an 1,800-page document that he filed with the court this morning.
Well, it's going to be negative 384 then because he's got that judgment and they're not letting him get out of it.
I know he just filed though, and he said I only have 100 million, so that's all I can pay you.
Yeah, they didn't buy that. Regardless, not to turn this into a political discussion because I know we'll lose what few followers we do have. And thank you again of our loyal subscribers for listening to this. But
Yes.
animated short, what will win is War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. There are 3 movies in this that I think could very easily win. I think Our Uniform and Pachyderm are kind of left in the dust, but I've seen any number of combinations of winners out of Letter to a Pig, 95 Senses, or War is Over. I'm going to take a little bit of a risk because it's always weird to try and predict these short program ones. And I'm going to say it's War is Over, which I also think was the one that should win. I really liked 95 Senses, but I really loved War is Over. I thought it really captured the spirit of the music that it was trying to complement. I thought it was a very engaging movie for being as short as it is. And maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking, but that's who I will pick to win.
Okay. Well, that's who I have too. Because I actually thought we were going to have some variation here because the favorite, according to all the odds makers, is Letter to a Pig. And while I thought it was good, I really liked War is Over and thought it was the better film.
I actually thought Pachyderm was better than Letter to a Pig. I didn't quite get Letter to a Pig.
I didn't, yeah.
I don't know. I enjoyed most of the shorts. Both of us have watched all 15 of the shorts in all 3 categories.
Yes.
It was one of the ones that left me scratching my head a little bit, not knowing exactly where it was headed with what the subject material was. I thought it was a little bit more of a straightforward story with the other 2 that are, depending on where you look, co-favorites. I've seen any combination where Letter to a Pig, 95 Senses, or War is Over is the favorite. So I think you could pick any one of those 3 and have a good shot. There is a part of me that is glad that you also went with the same one, so we have some safety. But is that also your should win?
Yes. Because like I said, I thought it was the best one of the short films. And I know it's a little outlier, but I think it's picking up. And if actually the Academy watches the films, which part of the problem is they don't all watch the films, everything, I think this would be kind of an inspirational film to a lot of Hollywood.
All right, let's move to Best Documentary Short. You are set to lead.
I am on my.
We'll alternate categories on who leads off.
Okay, so the ABCs of book banning is supposedly the favorite. I liked that. The Barber of Little Rock was a very good one. Island in Between was interesting. And I don't know, is it Wapo?
I think it's Nine and Waipo.
Nine and Wapo, which was fun. I liked that film. I thought it was fun. But the one that I really liked and I thought had the most impact was The Last Repair Shop. And that's the one I have for should win. And I'm actually going to pick that as an outlier over the ABCs of the book banning.
See, I'm glad you went first here. I've been back and forth all day between the favorite and the one that I wanted to win. I agree with you that I thought The Last Repair Shop, which was the last one that I watched, was the best one. It was the one where I openly wept at the end of the film. I thought, for being as simple of a concept as it was, I thought it was really good at interweaving the stories of the people that were working there with the students and their impact collectively. It was a really good piece of work for, I think it's only like 35 minutes of a documentary, but it was incredibly effective at what it was doing. I'll be honest, I know the ABCs of book banning is the political favorite. I'm sure it's going to hit certain chords within Hollywood. But to me, of the 5 best short documentaries, it's number 5. And I don't think it's particularly close. There's the one moment when you have the 100-year-old woman who comes in. And I thought that was the most effective part of the film.
Yes.
They start with it and they kind of end with it, but everything in between where they're interviewing the little kids felt like, I don't know, some weird ABC, like in between the commercials filler documentary thing. It just never hit with me that was effective use of subject material. You could have done
Well,
so much more with what you were trying to say in that.
I
I
know.
loved Nai and Waipo because those two women are fantastic.
Yes.
And the perspective of the grandson being able to interview them like that when they are watching Superbad is just hilarious. If you want to catch that one, I know that the shorts aren't all available, but I think that one's on Disney Plus. I just really enjoyed all of these, with the exception that book banning was okay.
Well, the ABC's of book banning, and I'm coming at this as a school board member, vice president of my school board. I've been president of the board for almost a decade at another point in time, and I have to live with this. And I'm like, okay, I didn't see that it was that compelling, but okay.
All right, let's move to best live action short. That means I'm up first.
So do you did take the book banning as the should win or is going to win, or are
No,
you
I
gonna?
also, because you took Last Repair Shop, I'm going to follow you because it's another one of these where I'm going to be a little bit more wishful thinking. And the one I'm rooting for, I'm going to copy your bet so that there's a little less variance, because I wouldn't feel as good with the conservative win just because I
Yeah.
don't necessarily want it to win. So I'll do a little bit of manipulation for the advantage of going second in this particular category, and I'll go with that as my prediction. Okay.
Okay.
Live action short, I am up first. What will win? It's almost assuredly, from almost all the betting favorites and everything you've seen so far, I think from a production value standpoint, from an acting value standpoint, all the things that go into making that one, and it's going to be the one of, I would say, all of these that is the most likely been watched the most times. So it's probably got the best connection with a general audience, is going to be Wes Anderson's The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. I also think it is the best one. I, again, think not just because of its length and whatever else, but the adaptation of the story, the multiple weavings. I mean, it's a condensed version of a Wes Anderson story. It very much reminds me of kind of Grand Budapest in the way that the story is told, in the way that it's interweaved, how it's shot, the color palettes. All of this stuff to me is like a very condensed Wes Anderson, full Wes Anderson movie. And I know that not everybody's mileage varies on that, but he's been a guy that's been floating around the periphery of Hollywood for a while that they want to reward. And I'm comfortable with this being his true first. I think it would be his first Oscar. I don't know if he won anything for Grand Budapest, if memory serves, because that was 2014, and I don't think he did.
No.
Should win is probably Henry Sugar, but because I also think you're probably going to discuss that one for a little bit, I'm going to give a small shout out. The one that I found the second most convincing is probably Red, White, and Blue. And
Yep.
that was one where you and I, when we got to the twist in that, and for I think it's less than 20 minutes of a short film, there's a big twist in the middle of that one. When we got to that, and it just changed the complexion of that story and became so much heavier, so much darker, but also so much richer. I'll just give out a nice little shout out to that one. I don't know where that may or may not be available, but that's one to pick out if you haven't seen one of these live action shorts.
Definitely. And I also have Will Win as Henry, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. It's Wes Anderson. I mean, you just look at I mean, it opens with Ray Fiennes. It, I mean, how many people in that have been nominated for an Academy Award that were doing parts within that short? It's just stacked. It's it's the very sugar of Hollywood, so it's going to win. Unfortunately, I really, really liked Red, White, and Blue, and I think that should win or should have won. I think any year that Wes Anderson doesn't have it and half of Hollywood in a short action, live action short, Red, White, and Blue would be the darling.
So I just thought of this, but I was supposed to start reading the nominees for all of these. I know we've only gotten through 3 categories so far, but I'll just backtrack a little bit. Best Animated Short, Letter to a Pig, 95 Senses, Our Uniform, Pachyderm, and War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. Best Documentary Short, The ABCs of Book Banning by Sheila Nevins and Trish Adlesick, or Adlesick. The Barber of Little Rock with John Hoffman and Christine Turner. Island in Between, S. Leo Chang and Jean Shen. Forgive me if I get any of the pronunciations incorrectly. The Last Repair Shop with Ben Proudfoot and Chris Bowers. Again, when I'm doing the proper names here, other than the title, that's for those that are actually nominated in the category. And Nai Nai and Waipo by Sean Wang and Sam Davis. Live action short, The After with Misan Harriman and Nikki Bentham. Invincible, Vincent Rene Lortie and Samuel Caron. Night of Fortune, Lasse Liskiar Nor and Christian Norlick. Those might be some of the toughest names I have to do. Any of those, I think it's Norwegian or Swedish, one of the two.
Yes.
Red, White, and Blue, Nazreen Chowdhury and Sarah McFarlane. And The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, Wes Anderson, and Stephen Rails. All right, let's move to Best Makeup and Hairstyling. The nominees are Golda for Karen Hartley Thomas, Susie Battersby and Ashra Kelly Blue, Maestro for Kazoo Hiro, Kay Giorgio and Lori McCoy Bell, Oppenheimer for Louisa Abel, Poor Things for Nadia Stacy, Mark Coulier and Josh Weston, and Society of the Snow for Anna Lopez Puy-Sever, David Marti, and Montse Ribe. And I believe you are first.
All right. Well, makeup and hair styling has never been one of my better categories. I did not see Golda, I will admit. It's one of the few films in this category I did not see.
It's not a very good film, in my opinion.
I watched about 2 minutes of it just to get a good feel, or 3 minutes of it to just get a feel for it. But I'm going to say will win and should win is both Poor Things.
Really?
Yeah, for the simple reason that there was so much that had to do with how both Emma Stone and I don't know the actress who played the second reanimated woman, but there was so much about their makeup and their how they looked and how they presented that had to be done that I thought that was that will get something. And I think that to some extent Poor Things will pick up at least one or two Academy's awards. So they're going to get some, but there's going to be lesser categories. Kind of a tip off of where I'm going later on.
Okay. First off, I don't think you're missing anything with Golda, as I obviously alluded to before. I think the one thing that they were good at was the makeup and hairstyling job, because they made Helen Mirren really look like Golda up until the point where she opened her mouth. After that, the movie just, it felt like an even worse version of The Longest Hour, which I had my problems with several years ago that you really liked, but didn't have much actual value for me. And given the climate that we're in currently, anything pro-Israel, yeah. Now, I've watched all of the movies, save for, I've only watched half of one of the nominees in this category, and that would be Society of the Snow. I was trying to get that in as much as I could today. I only got about halfway. And there's an overwhelming favorite in this one, which will be my will win, and that's Maestro. I thought it was an okay makeup and hairstyling job. I can see why it will win for making Bradley Cooper look about as convincing as you could. I know there were problems in advance of that movie and complaints that a non-Jewish man was playing Leonard Bernstein, but they made him effectively look like Leonard Bernstein through the course of the film, and I thought that added to his performance. So I'm not going to object terribly to the makeup and hairstyling go for that one, going to Maestro, because it looks like it's going to be the overwhelming favorite. But the one that to me should win was the one I only caught half of today. The little nuances in Society of the Snow with the blood effects, the white pale skin trying to have these boys kind of like stay animated in the cold, in the snow, up on that mountaintop in the Andes. There were just so many little nuances to the makeup and hairstyling effects of what was going on. And that particular technical aspect of the film made you invested that much more in this story. So to me, that's what should win. I can understand how Poor Things is up for this, but I don't think that makeup and hairstyling is necessarily where that movie excels as much as a category I will later give it. If I also will tip off a few things coming up.
I know Maestro is the betting favorite, but I have read too many pieces about how there's such a backlash against Brad Cooper over his they conceive of him trying to win an Oscar. And I just don't think I think they're gonna deadpan Maestro completely. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, yeah, maybe. I know it's the betting favorite, but I don't think it's gonna get anywhere because I think they're gonna shut Brad Cooper out completely.
All right, let's move to Best Costume Design. The nominees are Barbie for Jacqueline Duran, Killers of the Flower Moon for Jacqueline West, Napoleon for Jonty Yates and Dave Crossman, Oppenheimer for Ellen Maroniuk, and Poor Things for Holly Waddington. I think I'm up first. I'm losing track already. Okay. Best Costume Design, it's a heavy favorite. I think it also is the clear frontrunner in this. As much as I enjoyed the costume designing for Poor Things, one of the most effective things about this particular movie is its costume design in making it feel like you have, especially if you're an American kid that's been around or exposed to Barbie, all of the costume designing for all of the characters going back 60 plus years, 80 years of the lineage of that character, whether you grew up in the 60s or you grew up in the 90s, it all felt authentic to what was happening in that one. So, best costume design for me is Barbie.
I will agree. I think the Ken costumes were fantastic. The little Western look, and well, what was the the guy that was like, what was he doing in here?
Oh, Michael Cera?
Michael Cera's character,
Alan?
Alan. Yeah, I mean, they even put Alan in clothes that made it look like he should be there, and nobody ever remembers who the hell Alan is or if he ever really existed. But anyway, so I have Barbie for both win and should win.
Okay. So we tied again on that one.
Yep.
Let's move to best visual effects. The nominees are The Creator for Jay Cooper, Ian Comley, Andrew Roberts, and Neil Corbould. Godzilla -1 for Takashi Yamazaki, Kyoko Shibuya, Masaki Takahashi, and Tatsuji Najima. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 for Stefan Soretti, Alexis Wasbrot, Guy Williams, and Theo Bialik. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which is no longer Part 1. Alex Woodkey, Simone Coco, Jeff Sutherland, and Neil Corbould, who apparently is nominated 3 times in this category. Napoleon, Charles Henley, Luke Ewan, Martin Fenouillet, Simone Coco, again, his second nomination in the same category, and Neil Corbould, his third nomination in the same category. So a lot of crossover with certain guys in the visual effects field. I think you are up first.
I am. And I have Godzilla's will win, and should win. I'm just going to go with the betting favorite. And I mean, I don't know enough about this category to really understand it, but from what I did see, which is not a ton of this, I did watch part of Godzilla, Napoleon. I did not see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or The Creator. But from what I saw, I'm going to go with the favorite.
So this is another one where I think it could have split along multiple lines. I think that Guardians, The Creator, and Godzilla have all been in different lists as being the favorite. I think the current favorite for the betting markets is Godzilla -1. Godzilla -1 is one of the few films on this list, or of the entire nominees, that I have not yet seen. It is not yet available, and I missed its theatrical run, even though it was on for like 7 weeks. I guess I don't know. Maybe by the time I decided to do the project where I actually watched every movie in the Oscar voting, it had already gone out of theaters. But that, I've only watched half of Society of the Snow and Io Capitano, which will be coming up in International Picture. Those are the 3 films that I have not yet completely watched, but I should get at least the second half of Society of the Snow and Io Capitano in before the award ceremony. And I do plan on watching Godzilla at some point. Now, getting around to should and will win, I've never felt comfortable saying that something I haven't seen should win. And especially because I went through the trouble of trying to watch just about every movie of the 53 that are here. Forgive me for 50 and a half of these films. Napoleon was good. I thought its visual effects during the war scenes were about the only good thing about the movie for me. I really enjoyed Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, but a lot of that was practical effects. And in that case, I would have probably kicked that one out of there in favor of putting in Oppenheimer, who was doing a lot more with the visual practical effects, particularly of the bomb scene. And it's shocking to me that it was not nominated. And I don't even think it was on the short list for this one. So I don't quite understand that one. Guardians, we have to have a token Marvel film in the visual effects every year. And frankly, the Marvel films often win the visual effects. But I'm okay with giving it to different films that are different experiences and doing different things. So since I haven't seen Godzilla -1, and I thought Guardians looked good for a Marvel film because not a lot of them have looked very good lately, looking at you, Quantum Mania. The one I will say should win, though, is The Creator. I thought that was a really good combination of what seemingly were practical effects with combining. It almost looked like it was part of the makeup job, but I don't know if it was a green screen or whatever else that made certain robots projections of real people, but they were still being played by actors. Some of the combination of things that they did with the sci-fi and the tech and how they wove certain pieces together. Maybe you call it production design. I'll still say it's somewhat visual effects. I thought was inventive for how they had to tell that story. I think Godzilla will win, but I think The Creator in most years very well could have won. And I actually, for a movie that I didn't think that I would like, that I'd heard very mixed things about it going into it, I very much enjoyed. All right, let's move to Best Original Song, which one of these years was actually the deciding vote. I think 2 years ago you won based on picking a Billie Eilish song for a Bond film, and I was very disgusted by that. I will make no secret that I am not a particularly big Billie Eilish fan, but here are the nominees. The Fire Inside from Flamin' Hot, music and lyric by Diane Warren, who, again, I think this is her 15th nomination and she has yet to win. I also don't think that Fire Inside will win, but that's beside the point. I'm Just Ken, which will be performed by Ryan Gosling live on the Oscars, from Barbie. Music and lyric by Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt. It Never Went Away from American Symphony, music and lyric by John Batiste and Dan Wilson. And I don't even know if I should attempt to pronounce this name, but I'm going to anyway. So please save me that I'm maybe doing the overly white thing. But Wajaje, A Song for My People, is the translation apparently. From Killers of the Flower Moon, music and lyric by Scott George. What Was I Made For from Barbie, or also from Barbie. Music and lyric by Billie Eilish and Phineas O'Connell. I believe that I am up first. Is that right?
You are.
All right. What should and will win is What Was I Made For? I always try and hold out listening to all of the songs, and there are some songs that are nominated in these categories, and I don't go and watch. This particular year, I'm not going to watch Flamin' Hot. When I say I watched like 50 or 50 and a half of the 53 movies, I don't mean that I went and watched Flamin' Hot. I have no desire to ever see that movie. But I will listen to the song that's nominated. And I have often been critical of songs that are tacked on at the end when it's in the credits purpose of thing, instead of something that's somewhat imbued in the middle of the movie that has some drive to what's going on in the middle of the movie. I still think, though, all 5 of these songs were very good, very moving, but What Was I Made For was on a different level. And it's another one that made, when I actually didn't watch it in the context of Barbie, just listened to it by itself, another one that brought a tear to my eye. So I think that's by far the best song of any of these. I know that there's a big push for I'm Just Ken, and it's a decent song, but it's not on the same emotional wavelength for me with What Was I Made For.
Our listeners are going to think you're a big wuss, crying all the time.
I'm an emotional man. I don't try and hide it.
A lot of people would find that hard to believe, but okay. I agree on both accounts. I think it's by far the best song, although I really like John Baptiste. What is this? Like, I think he had one either last year or the year before. He is really good. I enjoyed his music. I enjoyed his personality when he was on Colbert. Now that he's left and he's kind of gone on his own, I hope he keeps going because I think he's got a real good career in writing music for movies and such. I mean, we're with age catching up to John Williams, and to some extent with why am I drawing a blank again? The German Hans
Hans
Zimmer.
Zimmer.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna need people writing quality things for films in the future.
Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor have been just fine supplying really good music and being nominated for Oscars, almost 2 a year for the better part of a decade. But the difference is Batiste won, I think, 2 Oscars 2 years ago for Soul, both original song and I think original score. This one, though, and I don't know if you understood the context, but American Symphony is about him, and it's a documentary about he and his wife, who is going through her own cancer diagnosis, and the song is written for her.
Okay.
So I don't know if you knew all of the context surrounding that when you were.
But he is a really gifted musician, and I hope things go well for him.
Well, I think he's gotten a lot more popularity over the last couple of years, particularly since he won his Oscars, because obviously that pushed or spurred him to eventually leave the Colbert. Well, I guess it's the Late Show. I was about to say Colbert Report, and that's not been a thing for 10 years now or something like that. I mean,
try almost 10, 9.
That's
yeah,
what
10. Yeah, okay.
That's what I said.
Yeah, it's been about 10 years. Yes.
But anyway, apologies to Diane Warren, who is the actress from daytime television that never won and was nominated like 40 times.
Oh,
Susan.
Yes. I can picture her. She was on like All My Children. Oh.
Susan Lucci.
Yes.
So apologies to Diane Warren, who might be the new Susan Lucci, up there with Glenn Close as highly nominated people, but never actually win. You are apparently the bridesmaid of the Oscars.
Yeah.
So best documentary, the nominees are Bobby Wine, the People's President, Moses Bueo, Christopher Sharp, and John Batsik. The Eternal Memory, nominees are yet to be determined. Four Daughters by Kauther Ben Hanya and Nadim Chekharuya. To Kill a Tiger by Nisha Pahuja, Cornelia Principe, and David Oppenheim. And 20 Days in Mariupol by Miroslav Chernov, Michelle Misner, and Rainey Aronson Rath. I believe you are up first.
I am. Well, this is going to create a little bit of a dichotomy for me because even though it was incredibly sad and it just hit me hard because being a middle-aged man and whatever, it should win. I have the Eternal Memory. But I think 20 Days in Mariupol is going to be the political statement and will likely win.
So I will say that I've seen everything in this category, and most of them in the last week or so. I enjoyed all 5 of them. for very different reasons. I think also that 20 Days in Maripol is the likely winner. I think it's won all of the precursor awards going in. It's probably the most important. Well, I shouldn't say important because all of these have their own variations of importance. But given the subject material, the difficulty to make it, the amount of danger placed around how it was made, I think it is the biggest achievement in documentary filmmaking that was released for this year or that is nominated. I also think it's probably due to all of those factors what should win, but I'll just give an additional shout out. I really enjoyed To Kill a Tiger and what it had as a cultural impact for me, opening up an area of the world that I hadn't necessarily seen to a systematic problem that we endure everywhere, but that is particularly egregious in the country of India. And I thought the characters were really engaging. I enjoyed the central character to it a lot for what I thought was a very understated performance by him, although it's not much of a performance in a documentary, but its subject was somebody I really wanted to root for. And not that there wasn't that in all of these. I found The Eternal Memory to be a very beautiful movie, a lot less sad than you did. And to be fair, I think you saw a lot of yourself somewhat in that and your fears
Yes.
of aging very much in that. But I saw more of the love story shared between two people in that movie. I enjoyed Bobby Wine because another area of the world that I don't very well know much about. And I thought that opened up a political story that made me at least care a lot more about what was going on in Uganda for probably the first time ever. Four Daughters took a very interesting concept to how to make a documentary by blending it with somewhat recreated scenes, but only through the subjects themselves, in sometimes playing themselves and sometimes not, but also giving instructions. So it was a very different documentary that I found fascinating, even though I would say it challenges what is or is not a documentary in a strictest fashion. But 20 Days in Maripol is devastating as a documentary. It's just, I don't know how not only the people that made it survived, let alone anybody that got through those days of the war and is still around to tell the tale, but how they got all of that footage and got it out of there and successfully made the thing. It's an amazing achievement. All right. Let's move to Best International Film. The nominees are Io Capitano for Italy, Perfect Days for Japan, Society of the Snow for Spain, The Teacher's Lounge for Germany, and The Zone of Interest for the United Kingdom, which has to be one of the strangest nominations because this
Yeah.
used to be Best Foreign Language Film. And so I don't even think the United Kingdom would have been eligible to be in this category. To be fair, The Zone of Interest is not in any way in English, so I think it still fits the Best International Film category, but I
It was,
think
but it's a British film with a British director, financed by Poland, spoken in German.
yeah, I know. It challenges what this category is and what is the definition of international, even though the Oscars are distinctly an American award and have been. But as we've opened up more of what the Academy is and who's involved in the Academy and added a lot more members over the last 10 years, I think that this category in particular has a whole new dynamic to it. And this is just one of the weird ways in which it's kind of manifested this year. So I believe I'm up first. Will win and should win are pretty obvious. The Zone of Interest is the best of all of these films from an auteurship standard, from all the things that it's trying to accomplish, from an importance of its subject material to where we're at socially from a global impact standpoint, as far as I'm concerned. It hits and checks all the boxes. And as far as the predictive nature, we have yet to have a film, I think, since they basically started or they increased it to 10, where we had an overlap between a picture that was nominated for international film as well as best picture and not win the lower tier category. The same with animated film. So the last 2 years, it was Drive My Car, which was nominated for Best Picture, one international film. And the same thing happened last year with All Quiet on the Western Front winning International Picture because it was also nominated for Best Picture. So this is one of the easier predictive categories. The Zone of Interest is almost 100% guaranteed to win this category. I would be utterly shocked if it didn't, but I also think it should win. So it's not much of a complication. But because we're going to talk about the Zone of Interest a lot more later, I will shout out a couple of films that we watched in this that I thought were very effective. Perfect Days, a nice, quiet little
Yes.
drama.
Wonderful
It
film.
reminds me a lot of early Kurosawa with, like, if you like Takiru, Perfect Days is your kind of film. It's got that kind of aesthetic to it. Very quiet, but it's a guy who enjoys his life and all the very small things that he has going on in his film, or all the very small things that he likes to do in his life. He loves his books and getting a new paperback every week. And he likes his job, even though it's what we would consider a very menial job, just cleaning toilets. So there's a lot to appreciate and like about that film, and maybe take a step back and show a matter of perspective to your own life. Society of the Snow. This is a film that had been previously done in an Americanized version, I think in the early 90s. The name escapes me at the moment, but I thought this was well developed and well done. And even though I watched the dubbed version in English, which I don't get the debate why you have to watch it in a non dubbed fashion, because the rest of the world watches a bunch of stuff that's dubbed out of English and has for years, it doesn't bother me at all. I thought The Teacher's Lounge was very good,
It
but
was.
ultimately I went with The Zone of Interest. So where are you going?
Same place, same thing. It's going to win. It should win. But I really did like Perfect Days and Teacher's Lounge specifically. I enjoyed them. And I know your mother watched Teacher's Lounge with me because she speaks German. And so she was listening to it without looking at the subtitles, trying to pick up all the language because she's going there in a few weeks, and was helping to brush up on her German. And I think her reaction and mine was fairly similar. So I find that I have a harder time capturing the nuances of a film if I have to be paying attention to the subtitles. So I almost prefer to have a film dubbed for that reason, because the inflection in the voice and not having to divide your attention between the action of the film itself and the subtitles, to me, makes a difference. But either way, it was still a great film, and one I would encourage it once it's available for anybody to see. I would encourage you to watch it because I think both Perfect Days and Teacher's Lounge are enjoyable films. So, yeah.
Let's move to Best Production Design. The nominees are Barbie, production design by Sarah Greenwood, set decoration by Katie Spencer, Killers of the Flower Moon, production design by Jack Fisk, set direction by Adam Willis, Napoleon, production design by Arthur Max, set direction by Ellie Griff, Oppenheimer, production design by Ruth de Jong, and set decoration by Claire Kaufman, Poor Things, production design by James Price and Shona Heath, and set decoration by Juja Mihalik. Again, forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Is it my turn or is it your turn first here?
My turn.
Okay.
I have both should win and will win as Barbie. The production design was so cool. It was like you were right in the Barbie house, or the Barbie hotel, or the Barbie airplane, or the Barbie camper throughout the thing. I mean, it was just like you were right there. And so I thought the production was spot on. It's going to deserve some recognition for simply because of the popularity of the film and how well it was done. I think, in all retrospect, one of the big problem was with Greta not getting a nomination for Best Director. I have a problem with that, but okay. But still, they're going to
Okay,
give
hold
it to
on, hold on.
somebody.
If you're gonna say that she should have been in, who are you knocking out?
All right. Well, when we get to that category, I'll go through it.
Okay,
All right.
because that is the intrinsic question. You can't say that she's snubbed if you can't move somebody out of
I
that
know.
top five.
Okay. Anyway, that's where I am.
All right. So we are going to divide the pick on the will win. I will say I agree with you on Barbie should win. I thought from all the little things, again, very much like the costume designing, the opening scene where she wakes up and the decoration of the Barbie dream house and everything that went into that, or the way that Barbie Land is decorated, the beach motif, how all of that is designed, I thought really added to the film. And you were kind of just noticing all the little things when she goes to her fridge and she pulls out the milk and it's not actually pouring something, but you notice that you could have seen a little
Yeah.
girl playing with 20 some odd years ago when Barbies were still relevant. So I thought it was the little flourishes, the little touches, the color design, all of those things that went into that film that to me should have been rewarded. But until today, I had Barbie winning Best Production Design, and I have seen a late surge from several of the precursors and some other things that have showed me or told me that this is heading towards Poor Things doing the upset at the last minute here. And so I'm going to go with Poor Things as the will win.
All right.
Let's move to Best Sound. The nominees are the creator for Ian Voight, Eric Odell, Ethan Van der Rijn, Tom Ozanek, and Dean Zupanchik. Maestro for Stephen A. Morrow, Richard King, Jason Reuter, Tom Ozanek, and Dean Zupanchik. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Chris Munro, James H. Mather, Chris Burden and Mark Taylor. Oppenheimer for Willie Burton, Richard King, Gary A. Rizzo, and Kevin O'Connell. And The Zone of Interest for Tarn Willers and Johnny Byrne. This is mine to start.
It
And
is.
the heavy favorite in this one, and this is going to be where I think the heavy favorite in several of the upper categories will assert itself. This is the first real opportunity that we've had to discuss it, but Oppenheimer has been the heavy favorite for a while to win this category. I think it's in a very effective use of sound for how they've done the design. I don't think the sound mixing in most of Nolan's movies are particularly good because of my issues with the dialogue, and that's been documented going back at least a year now when we've openly discussed it on this show. But I do think that will win. However, for much in the way that I thought The Sound of Metal was the best use of sound in a particular movie in the year that it won, the best use of sound in a particular movie that told a completely separate story, that engaged you in a completely different sense of what was going on in the movie itself, is The Zone of Interest. And I think that should win Best Sound. It won't. I have Oppenheimer.
I will agree on who will win. I will also agree on who should win. The effective use as the family is living their lives of shouting, screaming, gunshots coming from the camp that are just subtly interlaid in there so that you realize there's no way these people cannot have heard this is eerie because they're not reacting to it. So that's where I'm going with that because the subtleties of the sound is what really makes it for me.
All right, let's move to Best Score. Nominees are American Fiction, Laura Karpman, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny for John Williams, the oldest nominated person in Oscars history at 91. I think that's also his 52nd or 53rd nomination, second only behind Walt Disney. Killers of the Flower Moon for Robbie Robertson, Oppenheimer for Ludwig Göransson, and Poor Things for Jerkson Fendrix. What will win and what should win for me? Oh, excuse me. I think you're first.
I am. What will win is Oppenheimer, and what should win is Oppenheimer.
Agreed. I think it's the most effective use of a score in any of these movies for me. I do actually think that Killers of the Flower Moon was also a very good score, even if my mileage on that movie varies. I found American Fiction to be the most forgettable out of this category. And I think John Williams is a little bit tokenism, given that he's been nominated before, I think, multiple times for Indiana Jones films. And it's really hard to create a distinctive score on the fifth time that you've scored a franchise. But, it's John Williams, and we'll give him his flowers for being the greatest living composer there is, at least in my opinion. But Oppenheimer, the way that that gives you an emotionality. And for everybody that's out there that is too concerned with emotionally manipulative scores, sorry, but that's what I go for. I love emotionally manipulative scores. I'm a sucker for emotionally manipulative scores. And I think Oppenheimer is hitting all those right notes for me. And I know for a long time that Hans Zimmer and Nolan were like conjoined at the hip, much like John Williams and Steven Spielberg. But I think Göransson brought something additionally extra to how I appreciated the movie, from the opening with the wonder of exploring the subatomic particle world and kind of creating an optimistic feeling to the film, to the later stages where he creates a much more urgent nature when they're putting the Manhattan Project together, to the ending notes of the film, which felt somewhat sudden doom when you get the final notes with him staring off into the puddle and realizing he could have destroyed the world. All of those just hit me in the right way during the course of this film. And I think it's one of the things that I really loved the most about Oppenheimer this year. So I have it for both will and should.
For me, when the score becomes a subtle support to the film itself and doesn't overwhelm, to me makes the score better. In Oppenheimer, when you watch it the first time around, you don't even remember the score. Now you watch it the second or third time, which I think I've done now 3 times. I've watched it. Actually, I think I've seen it 4. The score sets the mood and the tension and helps build the tension of the scenes many times. And it is an aid. It is the salt and pepper of the film. So I'll agree with you. It should win, and it will win.
Let's go to Best Editing. The nominees are Anatomy of a Fall for Laurent Seneschal, The Holdovers for Kevin Tent, Killers of the Flower Moon for Thelma Schoonmaker, Oppenheimer for Jennifer LeMay. I'm going to guess it's LeMay because I don't want to say lame, but LeMay. Poor Things for Yorgos Mavropsaridis. And I believe I'm up first, right?
Yes.
Okay. Best Editing. Often in the history of the Academy, the winner of Best Editing is usually also the Best Picture winner. I think there's been a runaway for this one. We will discuss it more later for its editing and its pace, but I have Oppenheimer both will win and should win.
I agree on both counts. For me, one of the things I know that editing also has to do with the blending of scenes and blending of shots within scenes and all that. But the best editing is usually where they cut out stuff that is so peripheral that you just okay. Now, of these films, again, you've seen all 5. I've seen all 5. Killers of the Flower Moon, there were several things that could have been cut out of there. Just, they could have shortened that film up by 30, 40 minutes and it would have made no difference. In fact, it would have been a better film.
You went in the exact place that I thought I was going to be novel and say my own opinion. I know that we're against the grain because that movie is held in high esteem by a lot of people that are cinephiles. But I thought that movie very easily could have been 45 minutes shorter. There's so many things in that that just didn't need to necessarily be in there. And I thought it was a matter of, I'm Marty Scorsese and I'm better than you and I know it.
Well, that's part of the whole idea of a lot of cinemaphiles, which unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who are cinemaphiles and they just try to pick things that seem like they should, or that show that they're more intellectual than they really are, unfortunately. But anyway, that one in and of itself bothered me. Poor Things, maybe a couple of scenes could have been cut better, but it had a good pace to it. Anatomy of a Fall was really well cut, well edited, and there was no problems. And I had no problems with the holdovers, although there were a couple of scenes that may have drug a bit that could have been chopped up. So that's just a rudimentary, not getting into the specifics. So Oppenheimer to me was by far the one that was the most edited because for a 3-hour movie, there is not a point in that movie where I was bored. and having seen it 4 times and knowing what's going on in it, that I went, this is kind of slow.
I think that we're going to have a lot more comments when we get to our best picture rankings by the end of this. So I'm going to save a lot of the additional thoughts. The last one thing I will say, though, is if you want a great lesson in a best picture winner or series of best picture nominees being edited really well, the last time I watched the extended versions of the Lord of the Rings movies, I complimented Peter Jackson for knowing exactly how much to cut out. Because as much as I was infatuated by those films and I thought that a lot of the deleted content might add to it, I realized that all the stuff that he cut out that's in the extended versions, I 100, maybe even 1,000% agree with now on rewatch as to what it actually added to the film. At a certain point, it's just for the super fans adding in stuff that was superfluous to the novel audience that hadn't read the books and didn't need all of this extra background and character work. To me, that's really where the genius of editing can be. Let's move to best cinematography. The nominees are El Conde for Edward Lachman, Killers of the Flower Moon for Rodrigo Prieto, Maestro for Matthew Libatique, Oppenheimer for Hoyt van Hoytema, Poor Things for Robbie Ryan. Is it me or is it you? I forget.
Me.
Is it you? Okay.
Should win Oppenheimer, will win Oppenheimer.
Agreed. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on it because we're going to talk about it a lot more later. The one film that is not nominated for Best Picture that we won't be discussing later is going to be El Conde, and I don't think you caught that film, but I will just say it's a weird film that I didn't necessarily enjoy the subject material, but it is a beautiful fucking film. Gorgeous looking film. So I can understand why I got cinematography, but that's the only great thing about it for me. All right, let's go to Best Animated Feature. The nominees are The Boy and the Heron for Hayao Miyazaki and Toshio Suzuki, Elemental for Peter San and Denise Ream, Nimona for Nick Bruno, Troy Kwane, Karen Ryan and Julie Zachary, Robot Dreams for Pablo Berger, Iban Cormanzana, Ignacy Estepe, and Sandra Tapia Diaz, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse for Kemp Powers, Justin K. Thompson, Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, and Amy Pascal. What will win, I think, is also what should win, and for me, that's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is a movie that, or a franchise that already won its first Oscar for the first movie. This is the subsequent sequel, and I would say that this movie, for me in a franchise, what it accomplishes from the first movie to the second movie is, I would say, on the same level as The Empire Strikes Back does for the original Star Wars. It takes all of the elements of the original movie, it improves upon it, it moves the story forward, and it gives you an emotional heft cliffhanger that I thought was extremely rewarding. I don't know if I would agree with anybody that says because it's the second part of a 3-part series and now the 2 final movies are much more in concert, and because it leaves you with that empty feeling where you're leaving the theater somewhat incomplete, that makes this movie worse. But I just completely and wholeheartedly disagree. I thought the animation style in this is the best. It made me appreciate the original one much more. I will say that I came much more around on the first one, partly because of having to watch these 2 back to back. And while originally the first time I watched it, and I think it was just a bad headspace, I didn't like the original movie, I much more appreciate Beyond the Spider-Verse. But at this point, Across the Spider-Verse, for me, is the much, much more superior film. And so for what it's worth, I will give it to both of these. But a just quick shout out, I thought the second best film of this year is Robot Dreams.
Yep. I was going to say that. I agree with you on both points. And then again, Robot Dreams said so much to me about friendship, relationships, how things change, move on. It was just a very, very interesting animated feature. It's well worth watching if you have a chance to see it. Because it has much more than just the animated factor associated with it. It's poignant.
I didn't care for the animation style as much as some of the other movies, but I thought as far as the story and what it was accomplishing with that, that for me was the most effective. And the mileage may vary for anybody that watches it because there is very little, if any, dialogue in the entire film. If there's any dialogue, it's very short, like one word responses, or it's the lyrics from the songs that are played during the course of the film. I think some of that is very intentional, but for being a silent, for the most part, animated film, I thought it was incredibly effective in showing story through primarily the visual than it was necessarily through additional dialogue.
Yep.
So let's take a break before we get to the top categories. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 203rd episode, we discuss the first ever winner of the Big Five Oscars with It Happened One Night from 1934, celebrating its 90th anniversary. Directed by Frank Capra, written by Robert Riskin, starring Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. All right, so we left off at Best Original Screenplay. The nominees are Anatomy of a Fall.
Did you see that I tripped on my pant leg coming up the stage there?
No, I thankfully missed that, but I don't know if
Okay.
the watching audience at home did.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed.
Did you have any wardrobe mishaps?
Well, no, not this year. It's not one of those situations where my top fell off from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and you exposed a nipple. That was not good.
No, well, it is what it is.
So, Best Original Screenplay, the nominees are Anatomy of a Fall, screenplay by Justine Triet and Arthur Harari. The Holdovers, written by David Hemmingson. Maestro, written by Bradley Cooper and Josh Singer. May December, screenplay by Sammy Birch, story by Sammy Birch and Alex Mackinac. And Past Lives, written by Celine Song. I can't remember. Think I was first on the last one, so this must be you.
No, you followed up with Spider-Man.
Okay. No, I thought I. It doesn't matter.
No. All right, I guess you're right. I'll go. Okay, for me, the most intriguing, the most interesting, the most exciting screenplay was Anatomy of a Fall. I mean, I loved The Holdovers as a film and the story and such. It was a good film overall, but did not have the same impact from a screenplay itself as Anatomy of a Fall. I really enjoyed Past Lives as well. It was a beautifully done movie and screenplay, but Anatomy of a Fall to me was by far the best, so it should win and will win. And quite frankly, I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck May and December was about.
And it's supposedly a comedy?
Don't ask me, because I'm just sitting there going, what's the point? What am I supposed to be feeling, doing? What's going on with this?
So I agree with your comments entirely. I think Anatomy of a Fall was just operating on a screenplay level above the rest of these films. Because the dialogue to me was so crisp, there are two particular moments where I just felt that it was well ahead of any of the other nominees this year. One was when she's describing how she doesn't want to treat her son like a disabled child. She wants him to live a full life. And being in the disability representative field, that moment when she's just describing he's like every other kid really spoke to me. The other part was the very lauded and much talked about this year kitchen scene between her and the dead ex-husband. That was one of the best individual scenes I've seen all year. And I'm going to talk a lot more about it when we get to the rankings portion of it, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the current favorite is Anatomy of a Fall, and this is where Trier is going to win her Oscar this year. We've often seen where the screenplays are basically the subcategories in some ways for auteur directors who also write their own films. It's where we got Get Out to win for Jordan Peele. It's where we got many of the other auteur. Tarantino's only wins are coming from the screenplay categories, where they just
Yeah, how about Ben Affleck and Matt Damon?
yeah, I guess okay,
It
but
was original screenplay.
yeah, I guess neither of them has an acting Oscar either. Or in Affleck's case, he won the DGA award, but he was not actually nominated the year that Argo won. He technically has an Oscar for Argo winning, but as a producer as opposed to the director.
Yeah.
So then let's move to Best Adapted Screenplay, which is going to be one where I'm going to go a little bit off the board, but the nominees
Ooh.
are American Fiction, written for the screen by Cord Jefferson; Barbie, written by Greta Gerwig and Noam Baumbach; Oppenheimer, written for the screen by Christopher Nolan; Poor Things, screenplay by Tony McNamara; and The Zone of Interest, written by Jonathan Glazer. Now, I think Oppenheimer should win. I think it is by far, of any of the Best Picture nominees or any of the other ones, the screenplay that sings the most. It's got, not only because of all the technical aspects, whether you're talking about the blended editing and the way that Chris Nolan movies have always kind of interwoven different spaces in time and gone back and forth between different things, and then combining the black and white visuals, but with the court setting and the adaptation of taking this very dry, dense book and creating basically the trial of somebody's life, but also giving us why they mattered. To me, that was the best screenplay. But I've seen enough now recently from some of the precursor awards for a movie that I liked, I didn't necessarily love, but I can appreciate where they're going to go with this and break a little bit, because Christopher Nolan's Oscar, his guaranteed Oscar almost at this point, is coming up, that he's not going to get two for both screenplay and director. I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I'm going to go with American Fiction for Cord Jefferson as the will win.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew it. I thought seriously about it because to me, the Academy's gonna want to nominate or at least reward the effort because it really is a good premise and good story. And I thought seriously about it because I'm one of these people that always thinks that the Academy voters have a tendency to split their vote because they want to recognize certain films, but they don't necessarily want it to be best picture or best actor or whatever. And I thought seriously, but I think Oppenheimer should win, and I'm gonna pick Oppenheimer to win because I just think it's the elephant in the room, and I don't see how voters are gonna necessarily deviate on this. Not this year.
And this is one where I think I have similar mind to what you were saying about makeup for Maestro before, where a heavy favorite coming in is not necessarily rewarded when it gets to the larger Academy body. I just wonder if in other years where we've had such a front runner and then they get co-opted for best picture at the end. Let's take, for example, Power of the Dog and Coda, where we had a clear front runner all year, and then we just had this backlash slowly chip away until something came from behind and beat it. To me, Oppenheimer's been the juggernaut that's run away, that's been everybody's critical darling. And if there's a backlash at all to it basically sweeping the Oscars, I think this is one of the few categories where we could see it unseated and given to somebody else, where the Academy thinks it's just enough deserving to split the votes and reward something else instead of Oppenheimer, which is going to get a lot of awards as we continue to move up the list. So an interesting split there for us.
Okay.
All right, let's go to Best Supporting Actress. The nominees are Emily Blunt for Oppenheimer, Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple, America Ferrera for Barbie, Jodie Foster for Naiad, and Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. I believe you are up first.
Well, I'm going to have a dichotomy or a split here between who will win and who I think should win. Divine Joy Randolph did a wonderful job, and America Ferrera did a wonderful job. Jodie Foster made Naiad for me. She was by far, although the The actor who did the Navigator, I thought was wonderful as well.
I believe that's Reese Ifans.
Yeah, okay. The Danielle Brooks, I had a hard time picking her out of the whole cast. I just Color Purple to me was kind of a mess as far as I was concerned. I think the best acting performance of all of the actresses in this category was by far Emily Blunt. She had a wide range of emotions and ways she presented, and anger and frustration and so difficulty with support and all that. I thought she was absolutely wonderful, but I think Divine Joy Randolph is going to win, but I think Emily Blunt should win.
So I mirror a lot of your comments on that. I thought Danielle Brooks is number 5 out of this category if I'm going to rank them for me. I have many, many problems with The Color Purple this year. I don't want to pick on the black film, so I'm going to reserve them because let's just not do that for the only nomination that it got in the entire Oscars. But it, that movie just didn't work for me. America Ferrera, I don't quite understand it. I mean, if we're going to give Barbie nominations, it could have been in much different areas than this one. I know that she's just kind of getting it for the one speech that made everybody clap in our theater when we saw it on Barbenheimer Day, but I thought there were much better performances. So both of those I thought could have been taken out and replaced by other people. I liked Jodie Foster and Nyad, but overall that movie just is kind of bland overall for me. So I didn't care. So if I have two that are near the top, it's probably Emily Blunt. I think I have Foster just slightly ahead of her just because I just think Foster's probably a better actress purely, and she could probably roll out of bed and perform better than most actresses on any given day. But
Yeah.
that's splitting a little bit of hairs. But I think not only will win because it's almost guaranteed at this point. We know exactly who's going to win. Divine Joy Randolph has won everything coming into this point. And much like what we're going to get to in the next category for supporting actor, it feels like a foregone conclusion. But I also did think that she was the best actress because for me, and this is a little bit of a leading precursor, I think she was the best part of that movie. I thought, again, she brought the most emotional heft of the three primary characters in it. I thought that she knew exactly who that character was. And maybe it's a form of the right role coming to the right actress at the right time. But I felt that she both should win and will win. Let's move to Best Supporting Actor. The nominees are Sterling K. Brown. I love Sterling K. Brown, but for American Fiction. Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon. Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. Ryan Gosling for Barbie. And Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things. I believe I am up first.
You are.
Will win and should win, which I think you're going to agree with me on both counts, is Robert Downey Jr. When we walked out of the theater, I thought he was the number one thing that I remembered about that movie, especially the first time. You focus so much on that character and how he's portrayed through the story that when it gets to the twist ending and he's revealed to be this ruthless engineer who gets his comeuppance in the end, it really makes the third act of the film for me. And I thought he was outstanding in this. I have thought he is a fantastic actor outside of doing Tony Stark for a long time. I just think that he was really good at doing Tony Stark. And it was one of those where you have a really good actor playing a really good role, even though it's in a franchise movie. And occasionally you'll have that, like Gary Oldman playing Commissioner Gordon or Morgan Freeman in the Batman series. I know those are both from the same thing, but occasionally there's a character that pops because it's a really good actor playing a really good part. And this is one of those times where Robert Downey Jr. has stepped out of the shadow of what he was. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what his speech is because I think he will lead off the night. It's often that we get Best Supporting Actors, like one of the very first, if not the first, awards given out. And I am going to enjoy that. That's going to be one of the things that leads off the Oscars for the redemptive arc of where he's been in his career. And we get to celebrate somebody that has contributed so much to where movies have been over the last 15 years. So I have Robert Downey Jr. I could say more, but I'm trying to leave a few things for when we get to the rankings. I have him will win and should win.
First off, let's just give kudos. I Sterling K. Brown is just a wonderful actor. He Everything he does well. But
Agreed. 100%.
this is not one of the things that he's done that I would say ranks in the upper echelon of performances. I thought from The Amazing Ms. Marvel, his character in that show was much more demanding and more nuanced than in American Fiction.
Let me fact check that. That's the marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes. Sorry. De Niro's De Niro. And I mean, yeah, he was great. He was turned in another solid performance. Ryan Gosling in any other year. I mean, this is a strong category.
It is always a strong category.
Yeah. Ryan Gosling was wonderful in Barbie. And having watched Mark Ruffalo in this, I thought Mark Ruffalo's performance was the most entertaining and the most enjoyable part of Poor Things. But when I come down to it, I have always had this connection to Robert Downey Jr. from his early days. And it just really bothered me to watch him for a period of time when he was in his 30s go on this just absolute, looks like his career was going to be a dumpster fire, jail and prison and rehab and on, and then to see him rise up and some of the films he started making his comeback. He was in Good Night and Good Luck, and I thought his performance in that was exceptional. And then Tony Stark, he is so good in this film. It is such a great performance. It is like watching a acting class on how to perform, how to be so subtle that I think part of the problem that actors sometimes have is they overact. And this was all about subtlety and mannerisms and watching the facade just melt away at one point in the film. I just was floored by his performance when I saw it the first time. And having gone back and watched it subsequently 3 more times, I am just amazed at how good he is. Any one of these actors, I think, could be justified to win the award, except this year because Downey is by far, hands down, the best.
I will say, for me, in the recent history of the Oscars, this is one of the more memorable best supporting actor performances. And I would put it up there with J.K. Simmons for Whiplash and Christoph Waltz for Inglourious Bastards. I think of it that highly.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to Best Actress, which there may be a bit of a split here. I'm not predicting things, but this has been a 2-horse race with kind of a third dark horse hanging around a little bit, which...
Flower Blucher?
Sure. Would you like some Ovaltine? Anyway, because that I don't think all three of them have been head to head to head during the course of the run-up of the precursors, this is a category that could go in a couple of different places, and I wouldn't be shocked. Let me just say, there's one bit of an outlier for me in one of the nominees, which I will get to in a second. So, the nominees are Annette Bening for Naiad, Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon, Sandra Huller for Anatomy of a Fall, Carey Mulligan for Maestro, Emma Stone for Poor Things. I believe you are up first, sir.
Let me say this. Sandra Huller was wonderful. She is an excellent actress. I am looking forward to seeing her in things. I think she is going to be an actress who's going to be coming and doing things in the United States more often. Wonderful, wonderful actress. Annette Bening's performance in Naiad, I really didn't understand the nomination because I didn't think that much of it. Emma Stone, I understand why she was nominated, but it's one of these situations where when you play somebody who has mental, physical limitations, it becomes easier to perform it. And I think that more than anything, I don't find it nuanced at all. And I know you're going to disagree. I actually thought the best performance overall and should win was Carrie Mulligan. I mean, I thought she was by far the best thing in Maestro, and she made Maestro watchable. Otherwise, I think there were times where that film would have just been, you would have almost fallen asleep at times watching it. Although I did find it entertaining in the long run, there were just moments where she made it to me. But the will win is going to be Lily Gladstone. Even though there are moments in that film where I question how much she had to do, overall, I think she really had to be the muse to the violent, testosterone driven aspects of that film. And so she had to carry a lot of weight to dilute the testosterone of the film. So I'm giving it to her as a great performance, not the best of the category, but I think she will win.
All right. So I have a lot of thoughts bouncing around. Number one, I agree with you. Annette Bening, I have no idea why she's in this category. I've enjoyed Annette Bening and her acting for many movies. This was not one of them. She's playing a character who I don't understand, I don't think is particularly nuanced, who seems very wooden, and I don't understand why this one was one that somehow snuck in over. To me, the bigger snub is not Greta Gerwig, but rather Margot Robbie for Barbie
Yeah.
in this category, because I could have very easily seen her in over Annette Bening. I don't quite
Yes.
understand it. If there is a breakout star for me of this calendar year, it's Sandra Huller, because between both this for Anatomy of a Fall, and I think she's fantastic in that movie, she also does a equally great performance in Zone of Interest. So to have both of those, I thought it was a great calendar year for her. Carrie Mulligan is fantastic. You and I sung her praises up and down for Promising Young Woman 2 years ago, which I still think she should have won the Oscar for. This is one of the ones where I felt, even though she did a great job and I thought it was fantastic to see her because I just enjoy anytime she's on screen, it's one of those that to me, it was more of a movie star performance where she's just good because she's Carrie Mulligan. It didn't need extra layers or nuance. She wasn't going for anything, an extra gear in the way that she was in Promising Young Woman for me. Lily Gladstone, and this is going to be a controversial opinion, I thought was forgettable in this role. I didn't really think much of that performance. I thought you could have probably put a lot of people in that one. I didn't quite understand the dynamic between her and DiCaprio's character. It's part of the reason that that movie just doesn't work as much for me. And I don't quite get at why this is being championed as one of the great performances this year. I don't. I will say, against the grain of the history of the Oscars in recent times, or even just overall, normally when the SAG-AFTRA awards differ from the Oscars and the Oscar nominations, it has not gone to the person of color that SAG awarded, and so the Oscars usually differ. But I think in this case, I will also say that Lily Gladstone will win. I don't understand it, because for me, far and away, Emma Stone is by far the best performance of this year. I don't understand where you don't see the nuance in that performance and how she is going for it on every moment of that film. The freedom with which she is just going bananas in that film. And yet there's still some reserved quality that she is holding back, I felt. Not necessarily in a bad way. I know that's normally said for an actor when they're like holding back. And no, there's a reserved quality to it that I think keeps it believable without being too over the top for me. For some people, it is. I know that I have friends who that performance just, it doesn't resonate with them. For you, obviously it didn't, but I felt there were just so many layers to that performance. and the transformation she goes through from act 1 to act 2 to act 3 and then towards the end. I thought she by far was the best actress this year. So I have Emma Stone as should winning, but I have Gladstone will win.
I was hoping I had some differentiation there, but okay.
I know the favorite right now is Stone, but I think the momentum is behind Gladstone. And those have been the two people that have been neck and neck for a while. Again, I think the history of the Oscars would say that the comfortable bet would be on Emma Stone, but I think there's enough of a campaign, particularly because Emma Stone has already famously gotten one, and technically she got a second one for the wrong envelope being read in 2016. But
yeah, I know.
let's move to Best Actor. We only have a couple of categories left. We have the nominees as Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Coleman Domingo for Rustin, Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers, Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. I love Jeffrey Wright. I love him in most everything he's in. This one was not one that I loved quite as much. I thought he was good. I didn't necessarily think he was great, but a deserving nomination for a guy who I think could be recognized a lot more for some of the more varied work that he does. He's another guy that anytime he shows up on film, I'm happy. I actually thought Bradley Cooper did a good acting job in this. To me, where the movie suffers is in its writing and its technical aspects in some capacities and in the story cohesion. So for me, kind of the directing portion of things. I think it's shot in some ways beautifully, but it just doesn't tell a narrative that to me is either very interesting or cohesive. And so I have him highly as an actor in this one because I still think he's a very, very talented actor, but it gave me a few knocks against what he could do as a director coming after what I thought was the best film of 2018 in A Star is Born. Coleman Domingo, promising good actor that I haven't seen a lot of yet, but I would have thought that he actually was better in The Color Purple and was probably the only thing of The Color Purple that I really thought was a standout performance. Rustin, he's very good, but very good in what's normally a stacked category for best actor. Okay, cool. I don't mind it, but there are a lot of great performances this year, and I don't quite get that one. Now we get to the top two, who are the split favorites, have been for most of the season. But I think that, again, this is another one like Gladstone where the momentum seems to be behind one particular horse. And as much as I love Paul Giamatti, I thought he probably should have won for other things years ago or been recognized for other things years ago. And this will be reflective a little bit in my rankings later on. I must be one of the few people that The Holdovers it never connected for me. I've tried multiple times. I just don't find the heart in it that I did in other Alexander Payne movies like Up in the Air or Sideways. And I thought he was good in the movie. I never thought he was particularly great. The one standout performance, particularly among this category for me, the one who plays the most nuance, and I am going against my normal tendencies. I decry year after year all the people who are playing real people. And shouldn't we actually give acting performances for stuff where it's not impersonation?
Yeah.
Cillian Murphy killed it. Killed it. It would be weird to nominate Oppenheimer without giving Cillian Murphy Best Actor. Given that it's going to win most of the other major awards at this Oscars, he is so good. And while the first time through, maybe even the second time through, you're much more astounded by Robert Downey Jr. and the turn in that character, I think the more often you watch it, the more comes out of Cillian Murphy's performance and all of the things that he's doing in the course of this movie. Again, that lasting shot. I also go back to the scene where he's in the gymnasium and they're doing the foot stomping and then split screen or that cut to the eerie sound that happens. I guess it's like when your ears are ringing kind of sound is the way I would describe it. And then it's those people in ash and it's him watching horrified. There's just so much emotive in his face in that scene. It is just classic acting. And for a guy who has always been a supportive character, to get his due and to get the right part at the right time, I love this nomination. I love this performance. It grows on me the more often I watch it. I have Cillian Murphy will win and should win.
I'm agreeing on both points, but I'm going to just make one comment. I have never seen an actor portray two almost contradictory emotions simultaneously throughout a 3-hour film. He, at one point, is Oppenheimer, the arrogant, I'm the best physicist in the world. At the same time, he has the internal turmoil of feeling inferior to some, and also at the same time feeling apprehensive, like, what the hell am I doing? Is this really what I should be doing? Because I could be destroying the world. And he plays it, and you can see it in his facial expressions in his eyes, where he goes from these different emotions at every moment and every junction in the film. You could look at him and you go, well, here he's being arrogant. Oh, no, no, no. Now he's being, he's having apprehensions about, no, 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 no. And that's the way the film was to me. I saw it the first time around. The second time around, I was just fascinated because I don't know how you can do that without just being absolutely exhausted by the end of the day. Having been a trial lawyer where you're functioning on multiple functions within a trial and just knowing how exhausted I was at the end of the day, to be doing this and doing it for months, I would love to hear how he had or how he was able to unwind. My guess is he had to go someplace and like completely depressurize for weeks, because this would have just sucked the living emotions out of him and had a toll on his mental health because of the type of performance he had. So he was by far the best actor in this category. And I love Paul Giamatti, and I love The Holdovers. And I think in part because, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but it speaks to me because I've had teachers like that, were these teachers that were the old crusty ones that no one liked, but who I had a connection with, or who did things for me that impacted or changed my life. And I think that's what it's connecting to me from. And Giamatti so much made up that. So I would say in any other year, Giamatti would win the best actor in this category.
I will say, if it's Murphy or if it's Giamatti, this is the most forward I'm looking to for an individual speech, because it's two people that I really like, that I've liked their work for a long time, getting their moment in the sun finally. And it may be the only time they have it. So I'll be really curious to see what happens with this. I think Murphy, to a degree, might shy away from it because he feels almost embarrassed every time he's won. Whereas Giamatti, I think, will be understated and very appreciative, but never over the top with his enthusiasm for it. I think he will recognize that he's worked his entire life to get to this moment, and I would very much like to see what that does for him in that moment where he finally realizes the accomplishment, the recognition from all of his fellow actors for finally exactly what he's been for 20 years.
Yeah.
All right, we have one last one before we go to our best picture rankings. We have best director. The nominees are Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall, Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, and Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. Now, it's almost a open and shut guarantee that Christopher Nolan's going to win. So I know I'm a little bit preempting you on this one, but I don't think it matters which one of us is going to go first. Christopher Nolan's going to win. He's won everything going up to this point, and I think it would be utterly shocking if he doesn't win. I think it's finally the crowning achievement. I've often compared him on this program even to being the Alfred Hitchcock of our time, the guy who makes very popular big movies but will never get his due from the Academy. And this may be the moment where it bucks that trend. I think almost assuredly it will be, but I also think he should win. I just think that even though I've said that I think this isn't maybe not his best movie, the fact that we have this and as a conversation for whether it's not his best movie and it's almost assuredly guaranteed going to win Best Picture is saying how much good product he's put out for years. And I am not one to say that we should have makeup Oscars or that, whatever else. I thought Dunkirk is still his best film for me, and I thought that should have won over The Shape of Water that particular year. I thought Inception is one of his more fine films, but throw in Interstellar, throw in Memento, throw in The Dark Knight. Any of these in any of those given years could have won. He's changed the Oscars. He has been one of the more recognized and impactful directors of his time. It is his moment. And it's not like we're doing this for a film that collectively we say, well, it may be the best film of this year, but it's not necessarily one of his best. No, we're arguing whether this is one of the best films with all of his other films that could have easily been recognized in this category. So as much as I appreciate Lanthimos and what he did in Poor Things, and trust me, I will get to more statements on that. And as much as I respect Jonathan Glazer's work in The Zone of Interest and all of the things that he accomplished in that, and I thought it was a revelation this year of Anatomy of a Fall for Trier, to me, Nolan is the best of what we got. He will win and should win.
I agree with you on all of your points. Going back to earlier, and we'll get to this when we talk about films, but Lanthimos, I would drop in favor of Greta Gerwig.
Okay. As long as you had that in there, I'm okay with that.
Because, and I'll get to that, but let's put it this way. You love Dunkirk. The biggest problem Christopher Nolan is he is a brilliant man. There's no question. I've heard interviews. He is high IQ, high level of wisdom and organization and all that. Most of his films have been almost too intelligent for the average consumer. Dunkirk was a great film and I loved it. But the concept of having different times going simultaneously until they all kind of wove into threw most people off. And while I can understand The Dark Knight being a great film and well done, it's still going to not resonate with some people in this world because it is a comic book film. This is the film, and the reason why he crossed a point is he told a story. He told it with some level of simplicity that made it approachable by a wider audience. Yet to do it in an incredibly intelligent, organized, and artistic way. I remember years ago going to an exhibit in Montreal and they had Picasso, and it was just a white canvas with two lines and a couple of curved paints, and it was called Nude Recline. And it just got to the point where, okay, that's fine, it's Picasso. But it didn't speak to everybody because you kind of looked at it and you went like, why? What's the point of this? I mean, there's a reason why this film was done so well and still made what, 1.1 billion?
I don't think it quite got to $1 billion, but I could be wrong.
I thought it crossed the billion mark, especially after it opened in Australia and Southeast Asia.
No, it's still listed as 957 million. I know that it's reopening now for precursor to the Oscars, so maybe it'll get that extra boost to get it over the finish line. But yeah, I don't think it quite reached the billion. But still, a $950 million movie for a 3-hour R-rated talking historical biopic.
When you told me this was, and I saw the press, I don't remember if you told me first or I happened to see it. But either way, I was excited because I'm going like, this is a really great director doing a subject that is so interesting and so fascinating, because I've read multiple books on Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, and just was fascinated by the characters that were involved and the scientists and how this changed and revolutionized every aspect of the world.
It's 1,000% a Dana movie.
Yeah. And I just knew I was going to love it. And the fact was is he did it so well and did it in such a way that it had mass appeal, just made me it was kind of like it hit my sweet spot. So I'll agree on the director for will and should.
I was all excited coming in that we were going to have all this variance between the two of us. And while in the should wins, we did have quite a bit of variance, in our actual predictions, we only had 3 different categories. So for those of you at home who needed a little extra juice to watch the Oscars, a little extra incentive behind whatever you're watching. And I know the Oscars party I was at last year was on pins and needles by the time we got to the tiebreaker, trying to figure out which of us was going to win and have to watch the bad movie of the other's choice. But here are the differentiations. Best makeup and hairstyling, I have Maestro and you have Poor Things. Best production design, I have Poor Things and you have Barbie. And best adapted screenplay, I have American Fiction. I went a little bit out on a limb with that one, so I'm a little nervous now that I only have 3 and yeah. But you also have Oppenheimer. So those are the 3 differences. So let's take another quick break before we get to our best picture rankings, but at the beginning of that, we will do our tiebreaker. Before we jump back into the episode, releasing at the beginning of March, friend of the show Adam Hitchcock of the Streaming Circuit podcast and I are back with our special monthly series on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where we will be discussing each film from the original Iron Man up through Avengers Endgame. The first half of each show will be on his feed, and the second half we will apply the Stan Lee rubric to each film to determine the greatest Marvel film of all time. This month we're covering the Guardians of the Galaxy from 2014. Don't miss out, make sure you are subscribed to both feeds to get these episodes. All right, so where we left off, we were about to do our in memoriam tiebreaker, which did come into play last year. Because I am the 2-time defending loser, I will select first. There are many different names that I considered for this. One of them is William Friedkin, the director. I think because he's a Best Director winner, a notable Best Director winner, he could very easily be late in this category. But part of how to game this segment, it used to be that they saved up a lot of the big names towards the end of the in memoriam, and that they would go with the really big hitter at the end. And so we were trying to guess who was going to be the really big name at the end. And I think 2 years ago or something like that, we both had like Sidney Poitier. So we both said we can't use him. Friedkin might be too big of a name to nominate for this. So I also considered Norman Jewison, who, while he wasn't necessarily an Oscar winner for Best Director, was around Hollywood for a long time. We obviously, when we went through him on In Memoriam a couple of months ago, he was somebody that was highly influential in the industry. He directed a Best Picture winner. So it's another possibility. Ryan O'Neal, a huge Hollywood heartthrob of the 70s, was in Barry Lyndon, was in Paper Moon. I think he was second in the 70s in highest grossing behind maybe only like Clint Eastwood. So another consideration.
Burt Reynolds.
Oh, was it Burt Reynolds? Okay.
Yep.
Carl Weathers, the recently departed Carl Weathers, who I loved as Apollo Creed and a lot of the things he did, also for Happy Gilmore, but because he was in an Oscar Best Picture winner and he's recognizable for a franchise that was Rocky, and he's still been around, he's still been acting, he's been in stuff, he was in The Mandalorian, that was another possibility. Harry Belafonte, big-time actor, obviously for his work in the African-American community. You'd think that there's maybe some social justice aspect that he might go a little bit later, but I think that might be one where they almost lead off with him. I also considered Tom Wilkinson, the great Tom Wilkinson, who had been up for multiple Best Supporting Actor nominations. there's a part of me that wonders, and this last name was the guy I'm going to go with, and I may be audibling here at the 11th moment, because I think now that I'm thinking about it, the last couple of years, they may have gone in date order in the way that they passed away. So there's part of me that's now defecting and going back to Carl Weathers. Originally, when I thought about this, Alan Arkin was the name that I eventually picked, but you know what? Let's go out on a limb. If we're going to do the full tiebreaker, and I think I'm trying to game this, I'm going to go with Carl Weathers.
I have been thinking of this name, and it came down to two names for me. I had Tom Wilkinson and I had Alan Arkin. And there has been such controversy over how the in memoriam has been done over the last few years and who's been left off. I have a feeling that the in memoriam is going to be a lot broader, and it is going to be built based upon with ultimately decisions made on who has been the most impactful and who's the most popular is the last couple. Alan Arkin started in film in the 60s. And when you consider Catch 22, I think was 67, 68, something in that area. And he won his Academy Award for Little Miss Sunshine and then was in Argo. And I'm going with Alan Arkin. That's who I've been planning on going with. And I thought for sure you were going to usurp it. And what's going to ultimately happen is Alan Arkin's going to be it for me. And you are going to be coming back onto this show in a couple or in another week. And you're going to be going, yeah, I can just picture it. I'm happy.
And that's what I thought. I recognized that that was the guy that you were going to pick. I think I figured that out about 2 weeks ago, and that's why I was going to take it. And something in this moment spoke to me and said, I really do think the last couple of years, they've just gone in order of when they passed away during the last year. And because Carl Weathers not only was obviously a big name, but was more recent, and Alan Arkin was like towards the beginning of the year, if I remember correctly. I have this weird feeling that it's not going to be the big names, but that they're going to do it in some other fashion so that they can't be as criticized as other times. And so for me, I went with an audible in the moment because I had Alan Arkin circled. That was the guy I was going to go with. And I went with Carl Weathers. So
Okay.
We'll see. You're right. I have a feeling you're going to be right, that now that I did this and I read the moment, I had a gut feeling and I went with it, that I'll somehow be wrong and I'll be ruining this for the next like 4 years of preview episodes. And
So, in other words, much like our Dynasty Fantasy Football League.
Sure.
Where you ultimately overthink it.
You want to talk to me about overthinking things?
Well, let's think. Who's won 4 championships to your, how many have you won?
And yet every Sunday for a good decade and a half, I've had to listen to, I should have started so-and-so. They're sitting on my bench with 30 points. Dad, you would have never started the 4th receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's be honest here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, because we've gone longer than we normally do, I think I'm going to release this as a 2-part episode. So I'm going to cut it here, and the next episode will be releasing on Friday. So we'll have our normal release schedule for Wednesday, but we'll have our best picture rankings for Friday, and I will cut this together. So in the interest of trying to get this done, I will cut it here. We will be back on Friday with our best picture rankings as part 2 of our Oscars preview for the year 2023 in 2024. So that'll do it for this part 1. Thank you for listening. I asked you a simple question. Do you love her? Yes, but don't hold that against me. I'm a little screwy myself. Next week for our 203rd episode, we discuss the first ever winner of the Big 5 Oscars with It Happened One Night from 1934, celebrating its 90th anniversary. Directed by Frank Capra, written by Robert Riskin, starring Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at thenewRonnyDuncanStudios.com or at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, X, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronny Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our technical provider and distributor is Captivate FM.